So if you would have asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even when I was a little kid, hey, where do you see yourself when you're 26? What do you see yourself doing? I would have told you, anybody who knows me, I would have said with 100% confidence, oh, I'd be in the NFL. And obviously, I'm not in the NFL. And if you would have asked me 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, hey, where do you see yourself right now? I would have said, yeah, I see myself with this sales team doing this much numbers with these specific people on my team. And that didn't happen. And that comes down to the idea of there's a difference between your plan and God's plan. So if you ever look back and realize something like, you know what, I didn't have that in mind, but what happened was so much better. I think that's a really big idea that a lot of us get caught up on in the moment, right? We're always thinking about our plan first. And I read this verse today earlier this week that really helped me out. It was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. So I read that verse recently, and it just hit differently, man, because a year and a half ago, I had so much, like, my plans were so different. And I'm in the sales industry and I lead a sales team, and it's not that the numbers were that much different, but the people I was going to be doing it with were different. How I was operating my team was different. How I was managing my personal life was different. And that was all my vision back then. And looking back now, it's like, yeah, I realized I could have never scaled to the point where I'm at now and where we're going to be by having that same circle and that same mentality. You know, I was in the business, I had probably almost 70 people on my team, and 3/4 of them quit. And at the time, I was thinking, dang, like, how am I going to rebuild for this? This sucks. Why would this happen? I thought these are going to be the people I was going to build with together. But now my team is smaller now, but we're doing way bigger numbers than back then. And it helped me realize, like, hey, Lord, I don't know the plans you have for me, but I'm sure that you have plans for me to prosper. So I'm just going to trust you. There's another verse I heard recently as well, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But the biggest thing I wanted to talk about was your plan is usually about comfort, right? So you got to picture, what does success look like in your head? For me, it was, when I was a kid, it was being an NFL football player, driving a nice car like this, right? A year and a half ago, it was a bigger team, more money, faster growth, easier path. Even when I first got started, it was like, all right, I want to be a top sales agent with our company. And I want to keep doing that year after year. And I was that. I did become a top sales agent with the company. And then I realized, like, God didn't call me to just be a top sales agent. He called me to help be a leader and help lead other people. So our plan is about comfort, but God's plan is about growing us. If you look at the story of David, like, he was just a shepherd, and God called him to be a king. We all know the story of David and Goliath, but there's a whole story of David where, you know, God just had these great plans for him. And I'm sure David growing up, he was just like, oh, I just want to be a shepherd. So I realize a lot of our prayers are just too small. We're not thinking big enough. We're not praying, God, what do you actually have in store for us? My version of being a shepherd is I wanted to just have a successful sales career. But God wanted something so much bigger for me, and I can hear that clearly now. And I heard something the other day where it's like, what's your whale? Right? So when you're not listening to God's calling, what's a lesson that keeps showing up over and over and over again? So Jonah, God called him to go to a city, and Jonah didn't want to go. In fact, he ran the other way. And a whale swallowed him up and kept him in his stomach for 3 days and delivered him on the city. So what's a whale that keeps showing up? I know for me personally, it was stewardship. How can I steward the money I have better? How can I steward the people I have better? just stewardship throughout my life. So I know that was a big thing for me, but you have to personally look at yourself. And one way that I found out was, hey, what's a lesson that keeps showing up over and over and over again, and what is God really trying to teach me? Another verse I heard, like I was saying earlier, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not onto your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. So for me, the biggest thing was I had a bunch of people on my team quit and bills were stacking up. And I remember just looking at my checking account multiple months in a row, just being like, dang, like, how am I going to make sure I'm able to afford these bills? And he found a way every single month. I can't explain it. Yeah, I worked my ass off day after day, sacrificing things, but I'm still here. Bills are all paid. He just found a way, and it's just having 100% faith. And now looking back on that, I can say, like, he had my back. He's never gonna let me fail. He has a way. There's no other way to describe it, man, because it's unexplainable. But it's just trusting in him, right? So once you realize that, it's so much easier said than done, because I was definitely super stressed at the time. But looking back now, like, I started to realize I started to stress less and less and less once I saw him to provide more and more and more. So just trusting that the Lord is always going to have your back, all things work in his good, and still working toward it, right? I'm not just sitting there with idle hands, but just trusting, like, if I do the good work, the Lord's going to provide. The other big thing is, everyone knows this verse, or a lot of people know this verse, but it's Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose. And the biggest thing for me is, God just sees further than we do, right? We see one scene, one chapter. God sees the whole movie and the whole book. So looking back now, like, football not working out, I could not imagine myself if I was 26 years old and a successful football player, because I would not have, like, this career and being in the sales team and being with all these guys brought me so much closer to the Lord and helped me develop myself personally. If I was 26 years old making the same amount of money, but in football, I feel like my life would have been terrible. Like, I would have destroyed my life, because I didn't have a great relationship with the Lord, and I doubt I would have had good mentors to help push me there. But if you ask 8-year-old me what I'm going to be doing, I would have never told you running a sales team. I would have told you, oh yeah, I'm going to be an NFL football player. Looking back at my team last year, and it's not to say anything bad personally about people, but I just don't think that would have been, like, thank God I learned that lesson and those people left back when my team was only doing, not as big numbers now. Because the more you scale, the more the bad fruits or bad culture can multiply. And I would have never been able to scale the business how I wanted to. It's built on a bad foundation with that. So, but that was hard to realize at the time. At the time, I thought it was great. But you don't know, it's greater later. So you don't know what you don't know. So luckily, I was able to build that back up and have the culture that I wanted. And the last verse here is same one from before, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. So God's plan is not that it's always easier. Like, we're so focused on the journey, but God is focused on us becoming the man that we're called to be. So just keep that in mind whenever you're going through setbacks and trials and tribulations. And I know it's so much easier said than done, but you just have to have trust in the Lord and faith in the Lord. The biggest thing for me is, once I really trusted and submitted to his plan, man, stress started to go way down. I was able to focus on what I needed to do way more. And I feel like you're more able to hear him clearly and actually hear what he wants in store for you. So that's my story with that lesson. I think that was a big thing when I heard that verse earlier today. But yeah, there's a difference between your plan and God's plan. His plan is always better, it just might not look like the one that you had in mind.